Hi, and welcome to Black History Reflections here on News Channel 13. As you know, we did a number of Black history stories throughout the month of February, and we thought that it would be interesting for you to see the reporters and the photographers involved in that and just what went into their story. So we're going to bring in our guest today, not a guest, but I know her. So Tiffany Payton joins us, and Tiffany, hello, how are you?
Hi, Elaine. Oh my God, I see you every day, but it is just a pleasure to be working with you in this capacity. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. We want to talk about your story. We're going to bring in your photographer a little bit later, but tell me, if you will, the name of it and why you chose it, and just give the people a little background information.
Yeah, well, the title of my project was Knowing Your Roots, and I chose that title because Black hair is really just a staple in Black history. But more importantly, growing up, my mom would always say, tie down your hair, you don't want your roots to curl up. Just hearing that term, roots, and also, of course, Alex Haley's very important documentary about the slave trade roots. It was just all so full circle for me. And on top of history, knowing your roots, history, learning history, I just thought that that would have been the perfect title.
What did you want when you were thinking about doing this? What did you want people to know? What were you trying to get at?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about Black hair. The biggest misconception is that it's unprofessional. And I think, that misconception was created because people don't know the history. And when people don't know history, they kind of create their own narrative. But luckily with Black hair, we do know the history of that and the beauty behind it. So my goal behind the entire story was, let's shed light on the history of Black hair, the story behind it, but of course, how far Black hair has come in the workforce.
And so, did you find anything that surprised you about the story, or something that perhaps one of your guests said, the people that you interviewed, that they said that was just something you didn't know, or something that was different?
I think what was very profound about the entire story is that a big part of Black hair is braids. If you're Black, you know about braids. And I think what was interesting when I talked to the hairstylist is that he told me we all love braids. It's historic, but there is a downside when get braids when you get braids a lot, right? When you go from one braided style to another braid style, and that can induce hair loss. And for me, I am the queen of an install. I love braids, I love sew-ins. And when you kind of abuse that, I guess I should say, there can be adverse effects. Even though braids is a beautiful part of Black history, you have to consider your hair and how detrimental it can be to your follicles if you abuse them in a way.
And a part of the your piece that I really liked was just the history of it, and the professor that you had. Was that professor was from U Albany?
Dr. Hope Rice, yeah, she was from actually Siena
Sienna,
College.
sorry.
And I found her because I just put Black Studies in upstate New York. And believe it or not, that search pool was very small. That's another conversation for another day. That search pool was very small. But when I found her and her background and the amount of years she put into studying Black history, I knew she was the perfect match. And then the interview, it speaks for itself. She was brilliant.
Yeah. I think another thing too is you wanted people to see that Black hair was professional, but also, just like I was saying to you, of how great she was, and giving that lived experience and what it was like, and and how history was attached to this. I think it also was a story for me that was just informative to other people, the people who are not necessarily people of color, as to the history of hair and what happened,
Right.
and how um, people wear their braids, or they because that's part of their culture, but they also have to deal with walking into a building where they work, and
Mhm.
deal with how people respond and react to it. And I thought that was interesting.
Yes, 100%. And when I spoke before about the misconceptions, the history is why I needed to start with the history. We can't talk about today if we don't know the history. And when I spoke with Dr. Hope, she really put it into perspective.
Hmm.
And I think in the workforce, even today, people see braids as a style thing. And yes, they are a part of our culture. And of course, it's a beautiful hairstyle. But in history, this was a form of communication. This was a form of hiding food when we were denied food in the slave trade. It's far beyond um, style. Of course, down the line, Black hairstyles became a form of resistance. But if we go back to the 16, 17, 1800s, this was a form of how we communicated with each other.
Yeah, I did.
Because at one point, we couldn't communicate with each other,
Yeah,
right?
that was so interesting to me.
Yes, yes. So, again, I just want to really nail home the point that we can't really move forward and talk about today in after, before we get to the history.
Okay, let me bring in your photographer because I mean, was the person that edited it. Hey, Justin, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
So let me ask you, um, was there, when you were pulled into this, what was your idea? What were you thinking this was going to be about?
I had no idea. um, Tiff asked me if I could help her with something, and I was just thinking, I like Tiff, and I like working with young people, and she's enthusiastic, and let's get to work.
Yeah. So is there any part of this story that surprised you, or were there any shots or interviews that allowed you to glean something that you didn't know?
Not really. I mean, for me, it was like technical, and I kept Tiffany sat with me for 4 hours, and that's a long time to edit stuff. And so I would just turn to her and be like, "Is this good? Is this good? Is this good? Let me show you this." And I'd add some effect. And for me, it was like working with Tiffany was just a joy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I learned. I only started here a few months ago, so working with Tiffany for that long, it I got to know her better, and that was a joy for me.
When the piece was done, did you guys add music? I can't remember now. Was there music in it,
Yeah, there
Justin?
was. I think there was a little bit.
Yeah. I'm just saying, did you look, how did you find the music? Did you you want to make sure that the music goes with the story and that it fits. So I'm just saying, was there anything special about it in that capacity that you really loved?
I liked all the slow mos we did, right, Tiff? We were doing a lot of close ups. We're getting really artsy with it. We really had to look hard for footage. I remember that.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you learn anything? I mean, you've seen people here with braids, you've seen people out in public. Did you know the history? Did you learn anything?
yeah, I learned a few things. I just want to tell a little story though. So if it aired, and that morning I was out with another reporter, and we were at a hotel waiting for a bus to pick these people up. And the story came on Channel 13, and they were all watching it, and I was like, that's me and Tiff's story." And I was just watching, and they all leaned forward and were like so into it and like so interested in that. I was like, me and Tiff have brought joy to these people, and at the very end, I was like, I did that, I did that, I edited that. I didn't shoot it, but I edited it.
And that has to be good. He's talking about, he learned a few things from doing it, but he was out the day that it was airing and people were watching it and he was watching them watch the story.
Mhm.
And he had that connection and he wanted to be able to say, hey, I was a part of doing that. I was a
Mhm.
part of putting this together. Tell people why it's important for you and your photographer, Tiffany, to be on the same page and to work together.
Yeah, I think in journalism, and Elaine, you can also attest to this, that there's a lot of working parts to get pieces out. And with what I'm learning in this business is that it's a collaborative effort. And you have to be on the same page because you're putting this piece together for the public to see. So hopefully they can take something away from it. So I think it was important, one, to just give Justin Shumway a rundown of this is what the story is going to be about. This is what I hope to get from it. And him as the editor, photojournalist, his wheels is turning in his head of how he can visually make that story come alive. So I think that collaborative effort, those conversations is critical to the piece and even the viewers to make sure they get the message you were hoping to put out.
Right. And how did it go? You know, people see it on the air and it just magically appears. But how long did you work on this? Couple weeks or?
Yeah, I actually, when I watched it air, I almost cried because this is my first job out of school. And I've heard you work on special projects, Sabrina, Dami, and Faith King. And as you said, even from a new reporter's perspective, it feels like you work and then it goes on air. It's like a magic show. But for me, the amount of time and effort I put into this story, I think I haven't even committed that much time to the pieces I put together in school. So I think the day before it aired, I worked at least 13 hours, but it's not really about what I put in. It's about my passion for telling this story and raising awareness about Black hair.
All right, Tiffany, thank you so much for cluing us in and letting people, just see some of the background, work that goes into putting these pieces together. And I think that, and you can attest to this, I think we had just a great array of stories
Yeah.
for February for Black History Month. And yours was one of those that I saw that I thought, wow, that is really great. So we wanted to try this and just give people some background information and let them hear from you since you are the author of that
Yeah.
story, you and your photographer, Justin. So, Justin, we thank you for being a part of our little get together here. And we thank you guys for joining us. And we are going to make sure that we bring you some more information about some of the other stories that we have. So, Tiffany, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elaine.
And again, this is Justin. We just want to say, Justin, thank you. Want people to see you again before we get rid of you and take you out of the camera shot. So thanks a lot. We appreciate it,
Thank you.
Justin. All right, thank you. All right, you guys, I'm removing you. And thanks again for joining us. This was something we just wanted to share with you. And I will see you again on Black History Reflections.